So I heard you're an animator. You're working on The Last of Us Part 3. That's what I heard. And you get this shot with little JJ, right? Little JJ is all grown up. He's a teenager. He's playing the guitar. Learned it from Ellie. Four finger Ellie. Or is it three finger? Anyhow, you get this shot. And you get the mocap. You get the guitar prop. And then they tell you who's going to take this shot. You're like, I don't want that shot. That shot looks hard. How do I get the guitar to move with the body and then have the guitar move independently so we can raise it like that? How do I get the left hand to move with the neck of the guitar to move up and down? And how do I get his right hand to not intersect the chords of the guitar? Like, I don't want that shot, but how can I get you to take this shot? I want you to be that animator that says, give me that shot. I got what it takes. So let's take a look at what it takes to animate a shot like this. Okay, so before I go and I show you how to do this, I think it's always important to understand why we do it this way and what the problem is. Because if you never understand the why we do it this way, you're always going to be looking for someone to give you the answer because you don't understand how to do it, right? And so once you understand the theory behind it, then next time you need it, you're going to be able to now say, well, I understand what I need to do. So I'm going to show you first the theory behind what the locator group method consists. Okay, so I'm going to break this down into like little increments. So you can jump around the video if you're already familiar with a lot of this. Let's say you just want to know how to do it, then you can jump forward. If you really want to understand it, I highly recommend you watch the entire video. Okay, but this video is going to show you how to create a constraint setup using locators and grouping so that we can have this guitar and we can have it follow the character. Okay, just like we saw in the intro. So first we need to understand the theory. So what is the problem with using a simple Maya constraint? Okay, that is the first thing. The problem is here. We go to under rigging, or I think in Maya 2020 it's also under animation now where you have constraints. So we're just going to be focusing on a parent constraint, and I'm going to open up the channel box or the option box here. That way I can reset the settings and we all have the same things set up here. And then I'm going to show my wireframe unshaded. And then also make sure you open your outliner so you can see what we're selecting here and what we have here. Because one of the things we're going to create is going to be invisible in the viewport and you need to be able to see it in the outliner. Okay, so you can either do window outliner or click on this bottom button here. And then that should show or hide your outliner. Okay, so first thing is, what is the problem? So the problem with using just a simple constraint, let me show you this. I'm going to put the hat on the character's head. Now to show you this, I do have animation on the sphere just to simulate like it's a hat. He's turning, he sees someone and he's like, hey, good morning. And he has his hat and I want him to, like, top his hat or tip his hat, right? And, he's going to say, good day, ma'am. Or whatever people say, good morning. All right, so, and I want to attach the hat onto the head. Okay, so first thing you would do is always select the leader, or more properly known as the parent, and then the follower, we call that the child. So this is the parent, this is the child. Okay, also it was also known as like the master. This would be the master and then this would be the slave, or the driver, and then this is what's being driven. Driver, driven, it's multiple names for sort of the same thing, but let's keep it simple, call it parent and child. And then also I might refer to leader and follower. So for those people that are new to like Maya or CG, I should say. So first thing we do is we select the parent and then we select the child. You can see here what I'm doing, right? As soon as I select one, it highlights it. Parent is the head geo, child is the hat. And then, so what is this maintain offset? So the maintain offset, you can think of it as maintain distance. So it's maintaining the distance between what? And that would be the pivot points. So you notice when you have this gizmo or the manipulator, you always have the center point. So that is a point that each object has. So if I select the head, that's also a point there. So if I were to turn this off, it's going to match those two. So it's going to grab the child and it's going to force it to match the parent. So I'm going to quickly demonstrate that. And then I say apply. And what happens is it now matched the pivot points. So if I go and show my X-ray and then I select the parent or the head and I select the hat, notice that this point in the center matches for both. Okay, so that's what maintain offset will do. Now I'm going to undo. So Control Z, or you can just do Z, whichever still works. Now there's no more constraint. Okay, so I undid that. Now I'm going to do a maintain offset. And now again, select parent, select the child, apply. And then notice now we're maintaining that distance between the pivot points. So that's the importance between maintain offset. Most of the time you want it on, but there are occasions where you might want to match pivot points. Okay, so now what this does is if you look in the channel box, notice we have the translate and the rotate are like in this blue color, right? So what does that mean? And this is for the child. If I select the parent, these are red, which means I can key this, right? I can set keyframes. But the child, you cannot set keyframes. So we can already see what the problem is going to be. Remember how I said I wanted to tip his hat when... So if I move around, you can see it is following, and I don't have to do anything. I don't have to try and, manually hand key the hat to match the head. It does it automatically, right? But the problem now is that I cannot hand key the hat. So let me go ahead and show you that. I'm gonna close this. Let's say I want the hat to follow. Well, first of all, I need to set one keyframe. As soon as I hit S on the keyboard, notice that the blend parent is set to 0. That means my constraint was automatically turned off as soon as I hit set keyframe, right? So I need to turn this back on. You can either type 1 or you can also type on. Oh, can you? You used to be able to type on. Okay, I guess not. So it has to be 1. So now again, it's gonna follow. Right, so if I do 0, it doesn't follow. If I do 1, it does follow. Okay, so what is the problem? The problem is now when he goes here to bend down and say good morning, so I want the hat to stay on about here. I'm gonna hit, let's say 25 to make it simple. Hit S, right? So it's gonna stay on his head from 0 to 25. And then when he comes down here, let's keep it simple, frame 40. This is where the hat is gonna come off. He's gonna say good morning, right? Press S. And then at, let's say 55, the hat is on his head. So now, obviously, we would assume that at frame 40, the hat would go up. But as soon as I play this, notice nothing happened. So you might be like, well, okay, maybe that was a mistake. Let me try it again. Maya's just acting up, right? I'm gonna rotate it, hit S to set a keyframe. Or maybe I need to select everything, right click, key selected. All right, we're good, right? Let me press play. And then what happens is it just snaps back, right? It didn't even take into consideration any of the keyframes that I set on the child, right? So that is what the problem is. You cannot use constraints if you want to animate it after you've set the constraint. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the creating a locator, grouping it, and then using that method. Now I'm going to show you the setup that we're going to use to make this constraint work, where we'll be able to tip the hat and keyframe the hat while still being able to follow the head. So in order to do this, we need to create a locator and group it. So to do that, we simply go over here to create locator and then immediately press Control G. Now this is why I said we need to be in the outliner, because there's going to be things you cannot see in the viewport, and so we need to be aware that they do exist and that we can select them, just not in the viewport. Okay, so if I select the locator, and you can tell what I'm selecting by whatever is highlighted in this light blue. Okay, if I select the group, then that's light blue. If I select the locator, that's how you know. So always look here. If I select the locator and I move this over, and then I select the group, notice that there is something in the viewport there, but we cannot see it. And that is because a group is invisible. It's just a null. It's just something that exists that we're able to do in the viewport, right? So we can group something and then it's just there. It's a little tricky, but you know, you'll get used to it. Just anytime you see something like that, you know that it's grouped. So now you know that you have something on top that is the parent, and then this little line will tell us that this is now a child, right? And what does that relationship mean? So this means that the child will always move when the parent moves. It'll always listen to the parent. Okay, but it does not work the other way. The parent will not listen to the child. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that when I move the group, I can do this. Look at the child. The locator is moving with it. If I rotate it, again, I'm rotating the group, but the child is rotating with it. If I scale it, that locator also scales with it, right? So I'm going to undo all of this. Okay, but if I grab now the child can do whatever he wants, right? If I move this up, notice that the group is still down here. So the parent does not listen to the child, right? It only works one way. Your parents tell you what to do. So think of it that way, unfortunately. So if I scale this guy and I select the group, this guy is still the same size. If I rotate this, select the group, that is still at the origin. Okay, so I'm going to undo all of that. So now we know the relationship between the parent and the child. So, and then you need to be aware that I am overlapping these. That's why it can be a little tricky. So if you ever come into the viewport and you select them, you think you're selecting them both, but really you're just selecting the locator. Just be aware that in order to select the group, you must select it in the outliner. Okay, so now how do we use this setup in order to make the hat work so that we can animate it? We kind of have a taste because we know that the child can move independently, right, or on its own from the parent. So if I come down here and I show you this example, here is what we have in the Myosin. We have a head or a sphere, and then we have the cap, right? And so if I show you the group here, I'm just going to draw what we created in Maya. Here is going to be, this is going to represent the group, and then we need the locator as well, right? So the locator is going to be, let's make it green. So there is our locator and our group. Now remember, as soon as I move the parent or the group, what happens to the child? The child moves with it, right? But when I move or select the child, the locator, he can run around and do whatever he wants. So there we can already see how there is this freedom between both of these, right? There's this freedom in between both of these. So let me show you this. If I constrain, let me undo this too. If I do a parent constraint, if I select my head first and then I select the group second, right? Remember, select the leader first select the follower second. What's going to happen if I make this my leader and then I do a parent constraint between them? What's going to happen? Remember, a parent constraint kind of locks things together. You can only turn it on and off. So if I lock these together, what's going to happen when I move the parent here? What's going to happen is this guy is going to move, and is going to move. Oh, that didn't work. If I move the head, then that group will move with it, right? So what happens when the group moves? Remember what happens when we move the group? If I move the group, let me move the locator so we can better see this. If I move the group, guess what? That locator will move with it. So that means as soon as I do this, this guy is gonna follow this guy, right? Okay, so what if I told you let's add another parent constraint between these guys? So now we have this circle, almost like a full circle, right? This guy moves, and then this guy will follow because there is a parent constraint to that guy. When this guy moves, guess what? This guy will follow that parent. And because there is a parent constraint between them, if I make this guy, if I select them first and this one second and add the parent constraint, guess what? Now this guy moves when he moves. And so now we have this connection where I can just move this guy, the head, and then everything else will follow. And that's the beauty about this setup. But remember what happens between these guys is that these guys, let me show you a little bit better. This guy and this guy are not parented constraint, they are grouped. So what does that mean? That means that there is this, like, remember, like I said, that freedom to move independently. But when I move this guy will move. So it's going to act like a parent constraint, but we have this nice freedom here. So let me go ahead and show you what this means in Maya. So I'm going to move the locator back and to the 0, 0 origin, and then I'm going to select the group, and I'm going to remember, what does the group follow? What does this guy follow? It follows the head. So let's go ahead and grab the group. Let's move it over towards the head. Right, so here it is. Now let's add the constraint. Let's go open the parent constraint. Now I kind of want this group. Okay, remember, I have the group selected, not the locator. I want the group to move with the head. So I'm going to parent the group to the head. So I'm going to turn on the x-ray so we can see through it, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the maintain distance thing. So you can see the group will snap to the center of the head. So I'm going to apply that. I'm going to select the head first, select the group, and then hit apply. Right, and now we can see that has moved to the center of the head. Okay, so now if I animate this, you can see the locator is moving because the group is parented to the head, right? So now let's move the locator. Now I can do it two ways. I can this, I think, is still constraint from my first example, so I'm going to detach or delete the constraint, and I'm going to pretend this is a brand new prop. So no animation on the cap. Let's just move it here to the side. Right, it's a fresh cap. There's no animation on it. There's nothing. Clean, free to start. And let's say now, what are we going to do? We're going to constrain the cap to the locator. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, which one's gonna be the parent and which one's gonna be the child? So I'll give you a second to figure this out. So what is the parent and which one is the child between these two? So I want this one to move because it's gonna move with this guy. So this is gonna be the parent and the cap is gonna be the child. So my locator is gonna be the parent and then the hat is going to be the child. And I'm going to turn off again, maintain offset. Remember, the hat is going to snap onto the locator. So I'm going to hit apply. Okay, so now what does this mean? This means now that in order to move the hat, I have to move it with the locator, right? Why? Because there is a parent constraint. Remember, the parent constraint is forced to move with whatever the parent is. In this case, this is the parent. So I need to select the locator. Again, this is why I said we can scale the locator coming down here. So let's see what's going to give us a bigger, let's just say 10 for right now, just to make it simple. And then, so now I can move the locator and let's see what happens with the hat. Notice it moves along with it, right? So now I can move this. I'm going to turn off the X-ray now because we can see it. And then I'm going to scale this slightly lower, maybe about there. I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to close this. I don't need it. Now what's going to happen if I press play right now? Remember looking back at our example? If this is animated, the head is animated, and then this is constrained to the head, these two are going to move. And then this will move when this moves, which means the cap will move with that, right? So putting it all together, now we see that that moves with it. And now we have the freedom and flexibility to hand key the cap using the locator. So now if I go back to the frame 0 where everything is straight, now I can position this using the locator wherever I want. Let's say I'm happy there. I can press play. Because remember, this is a child from the group. Right? Remember these two guys? So if I select the locator, the locator can still run around. This is a child. Remember, we're talking about the parent here, parent and child. The kid can go get on the swing, get on the slide, run around, but it's only going to move when the parent moves. So it's moving right now because it's constrained to the head, so the child is moving with it. But now I can come in here, press S to set a keyframe there. Let's say right here, remember we said frame 25 was going to be the last frame. It was going to be on its head, and then he's gonna bend down. I think frame 40 we said this is where he goes, "Good day, ma'am." And press S, and then at frame 55 I'm gonna say, now remember, if I say 0, it's gonna go back to the origin of the group. So what I need to do is actually copy the position of this locator here. So I'm going to say copy, and then I'm going to say paste. And now I can press play. You can say, "Good day, ma'am." And then there we go. Now we can animate this and do all kinds of crazy things we couldn't before. So now it's, "Good day, ma'am." And this is the system that I pretty much use 95% of the time when I'm working on either AAA games. I used a system like this when I was on The Last of Us 2. I used it on Crash Bandicoot. I used it on multiple games. Recently I had a guitar shot, and this is the system that I use, and I'm going to show you now in the next little part of this video just how to run through it now that we understand how we use this group locator method.